Okay, I'm a little nervous. I've practiced this a million times. I might still mess it up. But we're going to get going. My name is Sono Osato. Welcome to my studio and welcome to the Gutter Blood Talk Show. We're really happy to have you. Before we get going and I get introduced our amazing guests tonight, I have a few people I want to thank. First is Joy Scanlon, who the show would not be happening tonight if it weren't for her amazing work and collaboration with me and putting it together and working with the whole team to make this happen, because these guys are really, really busy. Their programming's very vigorous, and they have a very small but mighty crew who deal with it all. And to even have them here tonight's really amazing. And also Kyla Shadeen, am I saying that correctly? Yay. It's okay, it's happened before. I also want to thank my AV team. They're all volunteers. Every time we do a show, it gets better and better, and it's because of these guys. So I'm going to do a call out. Back there, we got Dio Traverso. And we have over here Christos Pathiakis. On sound, we got Jacob Perez back there. We have Konstantin Belichev over here. Jessamine Platz couldn't be here with us tonight, but she's been amazing and has been really great in bringing people from Texas State. She just phoned me one day. I didn't even know who she was, and she said, you know, I really love the show. I want to help. So she comes in and out, but she's been really a team player, and she couldn't make it tonight. But we love you, Jessie.
We love you, Jessie.
And then Rita Marie Ross, who's been with me from the very, very beginning. She's my next door neighbor. That's her sofa. Yeah, she's a sculptor, so she did this up here. And then I also want to thank my members. I got quite a few of them here tonight. I wouldn't be able to do it without you guys. And I want to have a special shout out to my sponsors, none of whom could be with us tonight. They all sent their regrets, but Mark and Lori Frick, we love you. And Ivester Contemporary, it's Kevin's birthday. Happy birthday, Kevin! If you're watching, hi! All right, so for all of you out in YouTube land who are with us tonight, if you care a lot about the show, you care about what you're doing, what we're doing, and what you're doing, and you want to help us keep it going, we do actually have a Venmo page. You can donate through Venmo. You can go to With Friends and become a member, or you can go to the website and become a sponsor. I want to do a quick thing about the website, and then we'll get started. First of all, Jacob, who's also doing sound tonight, designed the website. So big thanks to him as well. You can go there to see all the past shows. There's shorts. There's also the Gutter Blood Talk Show Living Memory timeline, the art world timeline of everything that has happened here in Austin. It's an ongoing project. It's been going on for quite a while, but going back to the Elizabeth Ney Museum, which I think was founded in 1917. I should know this because I've stared at the list 9 million times. All the way through, it has everything on it, and it's ongoing. But there's a copy there, and you can also see all things Gutter Blood. So we are going to get started. I'm going to get rid of that. Okay, to my far left, we have Dr. Cherise Smith, who is chair of the African and African Diaspora Studies at Black Studies Collective and professor of art history at the University of Texas at Austin. She is the award-winning author of Michael Ray Charles' Studies in Blackness, University of Texas Press 2020, which places the artist's work in the context of the 1990s, the rise in collecting of black, quote-unquote, memorabilia and pop art, as well as enacting others, the politics of identity, in Eleanor Anton, Anna Smith.
Yeah.
Deviere Smith. I
Deviere.
practiced this. I Googled this. Okay. Nikki S. Lee and Adrian Piper at Duke University Press in 2011. Curator, culture worker, and art historian. Dr. Smith is the founding executive director of the art galleries at Black Studies. The only museum dedicated to Black art on the campus of the University of Texas at Austin. Her most recent exhibition, Old Wounds, Dark Dreams, featured works by artists Carrie Mae Weems, Colleen Smith, Rodney McMillan, and Charles Gaines, who are also the subjects of her current book project, which we'll spend a little time talking about. And then in the middle, this guy over here, we have Dr. Phillip Townsend is the curator of art and art galleries at Black Studies, AGBS, affectionately known, at the University of Texas at Austin. He earned his PhD and MA in art history from UT Austin in 2024 and 2016, respectively, and his BA in art history from the University of South Florida in 2014. As a founding member of the Austin-based curatorial collective, Neon Queen Collective, Phillip co-curated notable exhibitions such as Notes on Sugar, the work of Maria Magdalena Campos Pons in 2018 at the Christian Green Gallery, and Like the Lonely Traveler, video works by Maria Magdalena Campos Pons in 2018 at the Visual Arts Center. He also co-curated Charles White, Celebrating the Gordon Gift 2019, presented by the Blanton Museum in collaboration with African and African Diaspora Studies, otherwise known as AADS, and AGBS at the University of Texas at Austin. In addition to public lectures, Phillip's scholarly contributions extend to peer-reviewed journals and magazines, as well as essays for exhibition catalogs, including Charles White, Celebrating the Gordon Gift at UT Press, and Maria Magdalena Campos Pons, Behold, Getty Publications. At ABGS, he created significant exhibitions such as Waru Natashu Gunji, Earth, Body, Spirit, and Melvin Edwards, Wired and Chained, featuring the work of Houston native and African American art and sculpture pioneer Melvin Edwards. Phillip's recent exhibitions at AGBS include Nicole Awai, In the Thick of It, Rashawn Rucker, Patron Saints of a Black Boy, Michael A. Booker, Wave Patterns, and Alicia Henry, Unknowing. And isn't Nicole's show, is it still up?
Until Friday.
And also Rashawn Rucker's show is still up.
Yes, until Friday.
So you hear that, everybody out there? Go to AGBS and see the show. Both of them are amazing.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's get started. Try not to step on anything. So I wanted to kind of start at the beginning with the history of AGBS. So when we met, you were telling me the story, and it's quite astounding. We also, I should say that there is materials up here. I think, do we have the timeline up here? Mm-hmm. Great. There's stuff you can grab, including a piece of Cherise's writing, which is fantastic. And there's also a QR code if you want to, donate to AGBS and also to the Gutter Book Talk Show. But it's all up there as you leave. Don't forget to take things. But that also lays some of it out. But let's get started with that.
Okay. Well, first, thank you, Sono, for inviting us. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. It's an honor.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm a little bit nervous too.
Yeah.
We'll see how the nerves unwind. I mean, it is a long story, so I might need help with the story. I think a few people actually around this audience can help with the timeline. So when I first got to UT back in 2005, there was very little happening in Austin that had anything to do with Black art.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was the sole person of color in art history. There were Michael Ray Charles and John Yancey in painting, in art, and I'd come from a more vibrant art world or art scene in the Bay Area, and I wanted to try to recreate that in some way. Mostly so that I had people to talk to, mostly so that I knew that Austin could be a vibrant place. And I started by first inviting artists and art historians to come and be in dialogue in the department. And the very first person that I invited was Isaac Julian, who happened to be in Houston, so I invited him up on the same trip. And then the very second person that I invited to the University of Texas, I think this was my second semester on campus, is Eddie Chambers, who's right there.
That was in 2006, I think, Cherise.
Okay, so my third semester at UT. At any rate, it was a really auspicious beginning to have two of the best and the brightest minds in Black British art come to UT to be in dialogue, not together, but separately. And I mean, essentially what I wanted my colleagues in art and art history to know, and for the university to know, is that there is vibrant Black art that is happening, and practitioners who are Black who are doing great, important intellectual things. And so I continued down that path for a bit, and at a certain point I worked with my colleagues around campus to begin to hire colleagues like Eddie and Moya Okadiji, who came to campus, and all of a sudden there were 3 people in art and art history, well, in art history because there were still the others in painting, but all of a sudden there were 3 of us in art history. And we were then and continue to be the only place in the country that has an African Americanist, a diaspora specialist, and an Africanist. And on the one hand, I want to kind of say how amazing it is that the University of Texas at Austin could go from having 0
Right.
art historians having to do with Black matters, with the diaspora, to then having 3 in a very short period of time as being an amazing thing. And that's one of the reasons why I've been able to stay, and why I think it continues to be a pretty vibrant place to study and to think about Black art. And at the same time, I and we started to recruit students in earnest. And there are at least a couple of our students, Eddie's students and my students, who are in the room today, and they are flanking me. So that is like one nutshell version of it. And then we had this idea of a center for art for Africa and its diasporas. And that was a fledgling, short-lived institution that really didn't kind of take legs and grow. But it was a route that has blossomed into art galleries of Black studies, among other things. So again, it's a long story.
Yeah.
I hope
We have a lot to talk about
I
tonight.
hope I'm not boring
No, you're not.
you all with this.
Not in the least.
And then a couple of fortuitous things happened. We had a department of African and African Diaspora Studies that was created on campus, and when that happened, Black Studies moved from its historic home that it had lived in since the 1960s, and so there was this space that was vacant. And I and colleagues in African and African Diaspora Studies thought this would be a good gallery if we can raise the money to turn it into a gallery. And so, building on work that Omi Jones and Ted Gordon had done previously in the Center for African American Studies, I started doing an exhibition program that borrowed artworks from people in Austin and then outside of Austin, and it became a kind of bigger thing. And in the beginning, it was mostly graduate students who had really good ideas who were curating exhibitions. As we were able to raise the money to actually build the gallery. And so the gallery comes into being around 2015, and it is on the second floor of Jester Center. And some of you know the Jester Center is one of the largest dorms in the world, not just in Texas. And it is known to be one of the more affordable dorms on campus, so it's one of the most diverse dorms on campus. So we are in a building that on the one hand houses a dorm and on the other hand houses an activity center, a student activity center. So we have a built-in audience of thousands of undergraduates who walk past the gallery day after day after day on the way to the cafeteria. And so that's something that we think is great, that we have students who are always walking past, and you know, we wish they'd stopped a bit more often and came in to see the art, but we know they're there and they do stumble in and they come in with their classes. And so then in about 2016, we were able to secure a donation from the Christian Green family, and that is how the gallery took its name, Christian Green. At the same time, we opened the space in the Gordon White building, which is our academic home that we share with Mexican American and Latino Studies, and there we have a second gallery that's called the Idea Lab. So if Christian Green is your kind of pristine white box museum setting, then the Idea Lab is more kind of DIY, it's more rough and ready, it's in an academic building that's used. I mean, students are walking past all the time, staff is walking past all the time. We've got classes in that space, in that building. And then the building that it is housed in is 4 floors, and we show art on 3 of those floors that all of the inhabitants in the Black and Latino Studies building live with day in and day out. So I haven't told you all of it, but I've told you a good part of it.
It is like, I started going down the rabbit hole about a month ago of sort of going through everything. And we all met for lunch a while back. And one of the things that really struck me was the creativity of what you guys do, how comprehensive it is. And it really struck me, you know, that you're building something. And I sort of like came up with this, you know, because everything that you do is interconnected. And it's very different than just a straight up academic museum, or it has a different, there's something that's much more organic about it. And what I kind of wrote in the center, which all these things float around that we're going to plug into, is building and empowering an ecosystem.
Yeah.
So you're not only reaching across, you know, where you have, and we are going to talk about some of the Austin and Texas artists that are in your collection. A few of them are in this room. But you also have artists from Texas, you have artists from across the world. Yeah. You know, you've worked with Carrie Mae Weems, you've had like, so you have all these edges, you're firing on all these different pistons, plus your programming, you know, you have artists in residencies, you have symposiums, you have talks, you have, it's just this constantly, so it is an ecosystem. And when I went back down the rabbit hole with one of the things that we're going to talk about, I just want to bring this up, and then I think we can bring in some of the what you brought up about relationship building. But the project that you worked with, I hope I don't screw up this name, Gayla Sims? Gayla Sims.
Yeah.
That one I didn't Google. Delphine Sims of Why Black Museums.
Yeah.
And I pulled this out. This is not a single paragraph. I pulled out a few sections, but it totally nails what I was feeling. Because I was like, it's more of a Western sort of colonial paradigm where you have hierarchy, you know, and you have different levels of authority that reach down, and that's not really how it works. There's this what they call communitas, where everybody's equal but different in some ways, you know, and bring different things to the picture and make this happen, and it's a completely different paradigm. So as the director, like when I love, you know, that we started out how you started it. You're like, I started pulling these resources. I started pulling these people. I needed company. It started with how I was feeling.
Yeah.
You know, with your edge and your sophistication. I come from the Bay Area as well. It has a different tendency than Texas in saying, I need to do this, because you saw it, you understood it. You know, so there is a level of creativity. Like, in a way, you guys are artists with what you're doing. And you're bringing people together and curating people and making decisions that are multifarious and totally interconnected. So, and then I read this from Why Black Museums, and we can jump into that as well. The true promise and power of ethnically specific museums is their ability to transcend Western cultural heritage models. Ethnic museums create their own imaginative ways of being museum spaces, which is what struck me really hard and like really moved me. It was like, this is great. I mean, I felt so akin to it. This is a separate sentence. It's not the same paragraph. I just kind of shoved it on my piece of paper. AGBS sits among this expansive community of generative Black spaces where art, history, scholarship, and community come together to historicize and illuminate the immensity of Black cultural production. So there's a sense of mining, you know, and interacting and talking to people and developing relationships. And that sort of pops in at like the Neon Queen Collective and the story you told that you were Cherise's student, right?
Yes.
So I was going to like, take it away. No, but to build on that, like, that it is generative, that you guys have this relationship, you weren't hired off of you came out of you came out of the root.
Yeah.
And which I think is very powerful.
Yeah, it totally is. So I actually got my curatorial start. It wasn't AGBS yet. It was, I think, in the process of becoming the new gallery, but the gallery hadn't been constructed yet. It was actually the end of my first year in the master's program, and the Idea Lab, which was a flex space at the time, it hadn't been transformed into the gallery yet. It was a flex space that was a classroom, a lecture hall, and it served multiple purposes. Well, my first entree into curation was curating a photographic exhibition of John Penderhughes in that space. Prior to that, I had done some small curatorial work in undergrad at University of South Florida, but nothing that was as sophisticated as this project. And so that was my first introduction to curating an exhibition for a larger public. The thing I did earlier was a very small departmental thing. This was for the larger Austin art audience. And I felt super supported doing that process. And that led to other curatorial projects. And at the time, I just transitioned into the PhD program where I met my Neon Queen colleagues. Kayla Shadeen is one of them, and Jesse DiTilio is the other, and we all three were students of Cherise's. And we all were studying the same thing, but a little bit different focuses or specialties. But the core of what we were interested in overlapped. So we knew, and we all brought different strengths to the collective. So we knew it was sort of a good match. And I had contact with Maria Magdalena Campos Pons before entering grad school. And she told me, if you ever want to do a project, like, I'm here and I'll be happy to, lend my assistance. So when we got together, it just made sense that we would look to her because she is an artist and a curator, a scholar in her own right. So the relationship was not just of us putting her work on display, but engaging with her intellectually and her providing some guidance to us as well. Cherise has a long history as a curator, so she was also there guiding us in the right direction. And not only the show, but just, I guess, developing our curatorial collective in general.
Right.
And so that sort of laid the foundation for Neon Queen. We took on this very ambitious project. I don't think curatorial collectives take on such large projects in their first exhibition. We curated a 2-part exhibition that lasted an entire year. That came with programming, and we were shipping works, from all over the world, essentially. We got videos from Italy and from Spain and from the US. It was a pretty big project. I'm surprised we pulled it off, but we did. Thank you. We pulled it off, and it was great. And I think that sort of lit a fire under me. And I sort of look at AGBS in 2 ways. In one way, it sort of nurtured my interests as a curator. It had a built-in audience already, so it was easy for me to figure out how to approach or develop my curatorial practice because it was still in its infancy stage. But as a curator there now, permanently on staff, now it's like a playhouse for me. The funding for Neon Queen was, down and dirty. We were asking people for money, our families, our friends. We did a horn raiser, which was super labor intensive. A video. It was a video that I needed 30 takes to finish. It was scrappy, and AGBS is scrappy, but things are sort of more streamlined in the sense where the infrastructure is there, the financial support is there, although we need more, and the staffing is great. So I have a huge support system behind me so that I can then go out and curate shows that reflect my interests, reflect the interest of our audience, but also engages with student interests, faculty interests, but sort of sitting at that core of the gallery and highlighting, the Black experience.
Right.
So it functions for me in these multiple ways, but also I think what's unique about it is when you think about AGBS in relationship to the institutions around it, other institutions, I guess mounting Black art is something that we do all the time. It's not, it doesn't just happen once a year or, one artwork in a sea of others. We're really interested in the Black experience, and that is the key or the focal point of the gallery. So you will always have that. So it's great for students because when you visit when they visit other institutions, there are opportunities or chances where they won't see, artists, people that look like them, their experiences visualized for them. In this case, they'll always see it. There'll always be that resource there for them.
Yeah, it's consistent.
Yeah.
It's steadfast. Rather than sort of filling a slot. You can do whatever you want.
Sorry, Sono. You mentioned why Black museums, and
Yeah, I want to bring that up as well.
I feel like it's an important thing initiative that we started a couple of years ago with the Sims sisters, Gayla and Delphine, because we were thinking to ourselves, what differentiates us from other institutions on campus in Austin, in the world? And one reason we came to that question was that the Blanton in particular had acquired more art by Black artists, and they were showing more of it. And so we thought, well, okay, we did succeed in getting them and other institutions in Austin to care more about art by Black people and people of color. And we still exist, so how are we different from what they do? And so, in my mind, we're different for a couple of reasons. One, we really do think of ourselves as a university museum, and so we put on smart exhibitions of good art.
You do.
And I think beautifully, elegantly presented. So that I think differentiates us in one way. But probably the biggest way is the intimacy of the space itself. So it's 2,000 square feet. It might be as big as this studio, maybe just a little bit bigger and oriented slightly differently. But we do a lot with what we have. We transform the space for every exhibition, depending on the media, on the show, on the concept. And when you come in, it feels calming. It feels different than any other museum space on campus or in Austin for that matter, I would say. And so there's something about the intimacy of the setting and the scale that makes us very different than other art spaces. And we work at that. We work at making it an engaging and inviting space.
Yeah.
And, I would say that one of the big differences that I experience when I go to museums, and I'm a PhD in art history, is, there's rarely a time when I'm not policed in a museum. There's rarely a time when I'm not followed or when I'm told I shouldn't stand too closely to a work of art, or someone assumes that I don't know how to behave in a museum. And so if I'm experiencing that, and I'm someone with a PhD in art history who's worked in museums for a good part of her life, then other people of color are having the same experience of not feeling comfortable and not feeling ownership of art and art spaces. And so what we do is to offer a space where everyone feels ownership, not just one group or another group.
Precisely. Yeah, that's like boom.
Yeah.
I like just a welcoming place with with Ariel Renee Jackson. I was looking at that video. I watched it like 4 times. But that aspect of there's no projection. You can just, it's warm. You can just be who you are.
Yep.
You don't have to fill a slot. You don't have to, and you can really feel it. And I think it speaks to everybody.
Yeah.
I wanted to get a little more into why Black museums, of like what the actual infrastructure is, and to also for everybody's elucidation of what it is so they can look it up, follow it.
Yeah, so Why Black Museums is a symposium series that we've been having for the last couple of years. So we'll have our 3rd in 2025. And we have invited practitioners from Texas and from Austin to come and talk about their experiences in museums or archives or displaying and collecting institutions. And we've also invited folks from the larger United States, mostly, maybe exclusively in the last couple of years. And so we have essentially invited people to meditate on what it's like to work in an ethnically specific museum, how it differs from working in a predominantly white or a PWI museum, and their different histories, trajectories, and activities. And we have I think, learned some really important lessons,
Yes.
some lessons from it.
Yes.
Yeah. And so partially we wanted to put ourselves in a history of other Black institutions, other ethnically specific institutions. And when we think about those, there's the Studio Museum that got started in the early 1970s as a kind of offshoot of the Whitney Museum. There's the Afro-American Museum, now the African American Museum in LA, CAM. And, you know, there are very many others, the Anacostia Museum, which is not art specific, but still a really important museum. And so specifically Black art museums and specifically or ethnically specific art museums are more rare than kind of history and culture museums. But we are, on the one hand, of a kind with those and slightly different because we are also an academic institution. We are affiliated with the university and we are nested under African and African Diaspora Studies Department, which is how we get our name, Art Galleries at Black Studies. You want to say anything here?
About Black museums?
Yeah.
It was, well, the first, I think I participated on the first iteration of it. It was nice holding space with colleagues from around the country and also some of my colleagues at UT. And it was interesting to see how we all initially seemed to be working in these like separate modes, but then understanding how our production sort of like came together to support like this one goal of sustaining Black museums, the archive, me collecting, acquiring work, putting on exhibitions. There was this synergy that is happening across campus at UT specifically that didn't seem to have connections at first, but once we got together and started talking, brainstorming, we realized that we had more in common and that our efforts were kind of aligned with each other. It has been a like enlightening experience to hear other narratives from other practitioners across the country. And we've thought about some challenges that we have that we thought was sort of unique to us because we are a smaller museum attached to an academic unit at a large university. And these same sort of challenges exist for museums that are not a part of a university, that are separate and larger institutions. So it just made us feel more connected to these institutions beyond the sort of discourses that we are involved in or take up. There's some structural things that we sort of like see ourselves in conversation with or in a legacy, a trajectory with.
Mm-hmm. And also, like, well, reading it, one of the things that struck me too is the origins in many ways were archivists and libraries, going back as far as So there, it's a different paradigm.
Yeah. I mean, what we've also kind of learned, and you know this, but you don't think of yourself as part of a tradition, that there is a recuperative element to it, to recover things that are lost or that have been lost. There's a kind of protective element to maintain and keep and sustain the culture, the material production, the knowledge of Black people who've made them. And then there's the celebratory aspect of it as well. So, they all kind of come in and out together. And I mean, one of the things that I realize, I've been at UT for 20 years now, 20 years in January, so not fully 20 years yet.
But yes.
Yes, coming up on 20 years really quickly, is that UT and Texas is a very entrepreneurial place. And, I still marvel at what I have been able to build, what I've been able to build with other people, because I know I don't do it alone, I don't work alone. But I can't imagine this happening at any other institution. I didn't imagine it could happen here, but it did actually happen here. There was support for it, and there was space for someone with big ideas and a lot of energy, and I have less of it now than I had then, to do interesting things. And I think partially I had ideas that I wanted to see built and happen, but I also have a strong service ethic that sometimes gets me in trouble. But the service ethic is to pass it on and to train other people to do the same thing. And that's evident with the people that I work with, like Phillip and Kayla and Joy. And that the students who've worked with me previously who are able to go out and find the money to do the things that they want to do because they were fostered to do that on this campus.
Yeah, I think it's magical. You know, and like, while you guys have been talking, I keep like, a couple words keep firing. Like, I forgot to mention this. One of the words I have here is mapping. You know, and it's like all these touch points that are interconnected. There isn't any lateral or horizontal. It's just like, well, we met this person and this person. I brought this student in because they were really gifted, and then I called this person and then this person, and it's like star map, you know. But it's actually a form of mapping, which is also related to the creativity of it and the touch points.
Right.
You know, and yeah, I think it's magical. But we have a lot to talk about. Can I throw another one out?
Sure.
Okay. Notes on Sugar, Charles White.
Separately. Notes on Sugar.
Yeah, separately.
Is
throwing it all at you.
Two different exhibitions, his and mine.
Throwing it all at you.
Notes on Sugar is the first part of a two-part exhibition with Maria Magdalena Campos Pons that we mounted, Neon Queen, that we mounted at Christian Green Gallery. That exhibition, actually, this is crazy, comes out of a paper that I wrote in Eddie's class. Oh my God, in 2015, I was interested in systems of labor and production and sugar, and I forgot what that class was.
Oh, was that the Visualizing Slavery class?
Yes.
Yep.
And I wrote this paper, and I was like, wow, this would be great if it was an exhibition. And it was a group, it was a multi-artist focused paper, but I had like immediate access to one of the artists, so I was like, this would be a nice solo exhibition. So
It would go on to be a MacArthur Genius
Yes.
Award-winning exhibition.
Yeah.
I mean, artist, yes.
an artist. We were on the forefront of Campus Bonds. So Kayla, I, and Jesse, we sort of mapped out what it would be like to, because she was a prolific artist at the time we curated the show or were conceptualizing this show. So we thought about the amount of the resources that it would take to bring her here. How can we best take advantage of this? And given the scope of the project that we had envisioned, it made sense to like do a year-long exhibition or engagement with her. So Notes on Sugar sort of came out of one of the largest installations to date that she had created. And we wanted to bring that work because, like Cherise mentioned earlier about the gallery being an intimate space. Several shows that happened in between this, and you really can see how expansive the gallery is. And we were sort of thinking about compression. So we got this installation, Sugar Bittersweet, that was probably 200 components that we had to unpack individually, condition, and then assemble. I think it took us about a week and a half, almost 2 weeks to put that work together. We had some conservation issues because it was actual sugar that's
Right.
a part of the exhibition, and you know. But that exhibition was really ambitious for us, but also I think for the capacity of the gallery space.
Yeah.
So if you've been to the gallery, there are these 2 pillars that sit in it that we can put up walls, so then it becomes 3 separate bays. And we had initially envisioned the work sitting in a bay, but it was it was too huge to sit in there. So we sort of like pushed it out a little bit, opened it up, and the exhibition, the installation sort of like draped over 2 of the bays, which made it super engaging and immersive for the audience. But all that to say that the exhibition was part of, it is a research product. And that's how all the exhibitions are. They aren't just pretty things to look at.
Right.
They come out of scholarly research and a lot of engagement with discourses that the work touches on. But it takes a while. So our calendar is booked out until
Right.
2028, and we're working on shows already for 2027, so 2026. So, you know, our shows are super labor intensive in terms of like the rigor that goes behind
Yeah.
the
It
process.
shows. It's clear.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know. Kayla, do you want to?
Well, yeah, I think not only are the shows a product of research that's being done, they also produce research and
Yeah.
they're happening.
Right.
I think that's really important to us. And one thing that we did as part of our exhibition, and I think that's really been ingrained in my ethos when I'm curating now, is that exhibitions have sort of a limited lifespan.
Yeah.
So how can you create a footprint that exists beyond that? So I think we had a catalog that was really important to the process of the exhibition that Eddie Chambers also wrote for. That was some of our first writing that we had done. Also, we did an artist interview with Magda, which was really powerful for us to experience as really young scholars. And that also led to future writing. We wrote on Tammy's work. Tammy's been, I mean, for me, Tammy, your work was super influential. I think when I was thinking about the reasons for why we were creating the Young Queen Collective, we figured out ways to sort of lift up these amazing local artists that we knew existed and national artists we knew existed and just didn't have quite the space that we felt they deserved, to the platform that they deserved. But I also wanted to tell a story about the fundraising portion real quick, because I don't think I've actually told you this yet. So what the worst part of that entire process was raising the money. We raised, I think, about $25,000
Yeah.
between first going to Cherise and begging for seed money, which we got, and then sort of building off of that and growing based off of department funding, and then also doing what UT calls a horn raiser, which is a student-focused platform for fundraising where you send the link to your family and your friends, and you say, please, for the love of God, give me $5.
Money.
Or more than $5.
Or more than $5, ideally, but you know, every little bit counted. So that enabled us to create the exhibition. And like I said, we created a video for this. It was a really painful process, none of us enjoyed. I, just a month ago, this is 8 years after this exhibition, was at a symposium in Arizona, at the University of Arizona, speaking on photography. And this woman comes up to me afterwards and she says, "You look so familiar." And she goes, "Have you done a project on Maria Magdalena Campos Pons?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "I teach my class with your horn raiser video."
Wow.
Wow.
She said, "I found your video online and I showed it to
Wow.
my students as an example of how you can create from the ground up a project." And I said, "I can talk to your students. You don't have to watch the video. Please don't watch the video." But it was a really powerful moment for me to realize, like, even that little part, this one small internet piece that we hated doing has been influential for students now who are growing up in a different state who are thinking about the same issues. So I think that for me was like a really magical sort of coming full circle, and it's going to come full circle again and again. I think that's the beauty of what Neon Queen Collective was and what Cherise is creating at UT, because that's sort of how we emerged.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Here we are.
Here you are. Just 2 seconds. Is this water?
Yes.
Sweetie, do you mind getting filled a little more water?
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
You're so kind.
I would sort of feel remiss if I don't talk a bit about my colleague and friend Eddie Chambers. Again, I'm going to point him out, partially because this person I met when I was 20 years old and he was a few years older. I won't say how many years older. But we've known each other for, I think, 35 years at this point.
Long time.
Yes. And Eddie at that point was an art advocate, curator, writer, curator, artist, and was curating in a very grassroots way the art of Black Britons. And that is how I met him when I was studying abroad as an undergrad and trying to figure out how I was kind of coming across these various instances of Black artists. And one of the really important things that Eddie kind of drilled into my head and clearly into students' heads was that there always needs to be a publication that is associated with an exhibition, because the exhibition will go away after a couple of months, but the publication stays for a very long time after. And Eddie has made a career out of making fantastic publications, but also building archives in really amazing ways through exhibitions, through actually assembling ephemera and archival materials, and creating exhibitions, besides teaching all the great students that he does. And I'm saying that because it's not just me, right? I'm not training students in a vacuum on my own. I am having colleagues participate alongside me and I alongside them in making the vibrant environment that we have, that we've created.
Yeah. It's definitely a team that just keeps expanding and fluctuating, and it's like breathing.
Yeah.
Can we jump into Old Wounds, Dark Dreams really quick, because it also relates to your most recent writing project, and you got stuff cooking with Carrie Mae Weems.
Yes.
Can we hear about
a lot
it?
of stuff cooking with Carrie Mae Weems. So I think it was 2 years ago now, I curated an exhibition that's called Old Wounds, Dark Dreams, and that is that was a video exhibition that was at Christian Green. It was the first time that we had an all-video exhibition. We have had video in isolated parts of the gallery, or we've had the Idea Lab dedicated to video. But in turning all of Christian Green into an all-video space, it really took some kind of racking of brains to figure out how to do that. And some of you may have seen it, but if you didn't, sorry?
It was amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Kids loved it too.
Oh, good, thank you. But we closed curtains, blinds, and then we put this great vinyl on our windows, and we came across the kind of notion to show the videos in order instead of, kind of assuming that each video had to show simultaneously. And so we ended up, and I say we because we might have had 5 different ideas on how to display the works. In the end, we came to this sequencing, and the sequencing added so much to the exhibition that it's hard to even describe. It's hard to even think of it happening a different way than it did happen. But there was something about the sequencing where you kind of eased into very deep kind of intellectual work that was interesting to look at, but was also kind of emotionally laden, which is what the project is about. It's about trauma and how one does not kind of move through trauma, that there is no catharsis, that on the other end of it you feel better and you feel light and improved and different. It's more that the works that I'm studying or working on for this book, that trauma happens and one finds a way to continue with it, and one is changed as a result of it. And so that's the book project that I'm working on. And as it's been conceived, it has a chapter on Carrie Mae Weems, on Rodney McMillan, Charles Gaines, Colleen Smith. And so what Christian Green gave me was the space to really think of an exhibition as a laboratory. And so these were works that I had seen in individual exhibitions that I had seen on my computer, this big, but to have a video projected into space, to actually feel the sound as it is resonating through the space was a really different thing altogether. And even better still was to have conversations in real time with people who were watching it with me and who saw it afterwards. And so all of that has now made its way into the project, and that's a beautiful thing. I mean, it speaks to the ways that my research birthed the exhibition, but then the exhibition is, kind of making more research and a more informed understanding of the artworks come out of it. Yeah. So the Carrie Mae Weems piece that I am working on that I did not show for Old Wounds, Dark Dreams is called From Here I Saw What Happened and I Cried, and some of you will know it. It's photographs of photographs that she did in 1995, and some of them are old daguerreotypes that she photographed, and others are more recent works by Robert Mapplethorpe and Edward Weston, among others. But basically what she's meditating on is how the technology and representation of photography has regarded the Black body and Black people, and that is as an instrument of oppression. That's her kind of ultimate idea. And so that is a big focus of my own work right now, that is both part of that book project and other stuff, grows out of it in really interesting ways.
When do we get to see it? You don't have to answer that.
Yeah.
I'm just being greedy.
Yeah, later. I guess the thing that I would say is that chapter is kind of big enough to be its own book right now.
Right.
And the book itself is paused because I'm really busy.
Right.
And on the one hand, that's a bummer because it's really the research that kind of keeps me sane and keeps me grounded. You practitioners in the room know that if you haven't been able to get to the studio, that
you get cranky.
Yeah, I'm in the cranky phase.
Well, we're pulling for you.
Thank you.
Can we loop back to Charles White?
Well, yes, but you have to make a distinction. So there's two Charles White exhibitions. Yeah. There was one that I co-curated at the Blanton.
Right.
And then there's the one that Cherise curated at AGBS at Christian Green. I'll be talking about both of them.
Well, I'm really glad that you re-clarified that.
Okay.
Even though I read it numerous times. I'm nervous. But I think it's important. Can we touch on that for texture? I think.
Yeah. Do you want to add context about the gift first?
Yeah.
And then
You want to start there, or
you can start.
Okay.
You were instrumental in the gift.
So, the founding chair of African and African Diaspora Studies, Ted Gordon is his name, had been saying to me for years, you should go to my parents' house and see what they've got hanging there. And I'm like, okay, sure. Sometime I'll get to your parents' house in upstate New York, without mentioning what was actually there. And so at some point he said, oh, why don't you go to my parents' house and see what they've got? And I was headed to New York a couple of weeks later, and I was like, sure, I will leave New York City and go into the Hudson River Valley to visit your parents who I've not met and see what they've got
What do you got in there?
Yeah, to see what they've got hanging. And so I did do that. I went, took a car, I think, service up to the Hudson River Valley into Pomona, which is where they live. And they welcomed me into their house, gave me some banana bread or apple pie, I can't remember which. And the house is filled with Charles White drawings. And so what I then learned is that our anthropologist, activist, kind of revolutionary founding chair, grew up surrounded by art, and it made everything, kind of put everything in context why he had supported the interest that I had. Oh, and along with Omi Jones, I want to say it's the two of them, but these two non-visual art people had really deep sensitivity to visual art as an anthropologist and as a theater historian and playwright herself. And so I saw all of these amazing Charles Whites, and I came back from New York, and I said, Ted, how would you feel if I talked to your parents about donating this work to UT? And he said, well, if you want to do that, that's that's your thing to undertake. And so I started the process of really explaining to them why UT could be an amazing place to study Black art and why it could be a fantastic repository for this amazing collection of Charles White works. And so in the end, they did donate the work, and that is owned by Black Studies at UT along with the Blanton. And I will also tell you that because of that gift, we were able to name the Black and Latino Studies building after this collection that was donated to UT. And so the building is named Gordon White, and it is Gordon because that is the family that donated the artworks to the university and to Black Studies, but it's White because of Charles White. And so what the name of the building memorializes is a very deep friendship that the social scientist,
Oh, this story.
yes, the social scientist Edmund Gordon and the physician Susan Gordon had with Florence and Charles White. And so, do I have Charles White's wife's?
Frances.
Frances, thank you. Frances White's, sorry, I confused myself. At any rate, these two mixed-race interracial couples in the 1940s were best friends, an art couple and physician, social scientist couple, and they influenced each other and did everything together and just kind of pushed their own thinking. And so the Gordons came to have the White artworks because of their deep friendship with their artist friends. And then those artworks ended up coming to UT, and that has in turn helped us grow the vibrant Black art program that we have at UT now, and helps other donors and collectors think, oh, this is actually a place that is welcoming and will make good use of the artworks that we donate. And so as a result of their gift, we decided that we needed to do an exhibition to celebrate the gift. So we had...
Show at the Blanton was amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Very
Thank you.
beautiful.
Thank you. Phillip?
Yeah, thank you. So that show, I think I should back up because when I got to UT in 2014, I was Cherise's GRA, and the first assignment that I had was to go up to the Hudson Valley to go visit the Gordons. And at the time, I was like, why am I going to New York? Who is this Charles White guy? But as soon as I walked into their home, I understood why I was there. The work, and you've seen it if you visit the exhibition or have come to the galleries or even at the Blanton.
I think one of the paintings is on display at the Blanton.
At the Blanton right now.
Yeah.
The work is incredible. I spent some time there. I think this was when the Art Institute Chicago started preliminary research for the retrospective that would then travel from Chicago to New York to LA. I spent some time with Dr. Gordon there. But in any case, fast forward, that I continued that research at the Blanton as a fellow there. And one of the ways that the exhibition was conceptualized is that one exhibition would consider Charles White and his contemporaries, and the other would look at, I guess, the residue, the legacy of Charles White and how he influenced contemporary artists. And so the exhibition at the Blanton focused on 3 different aspects of Charles White's practice. So one was realism and regionalism. So he was paired with artists like Thomas Hart Benton. And what was great about that area, that section of the exhibition, is also Charles White was a photographer. So some of his early photographs was included in that exhibition. The second part looked at his time in Mexico and artists that he was in conversation with, or he was influenced by, or he was influenced when he did some work at the Taller de Grafica there. And the third section sort of looked at his production. We were lucky to borrow from Dr. Chambers' robust archive of Charles White ephemera. So there were album covers, covers of journals, magazines, and also thinking of the work was paired with artists from Texas. So John Biggers was in that work, and that some of that work came out of the HRC, the Hair Ransom Center. But one of the things that I took from that experience and exhibition is even though Charles White's works are like skyrocketing now and they are sort of limited in their availability, when he was practicing art, like he made his work affordable. He worked in print quite often, so the work was able to be reproduced and distributed around. He illustrated album covers, calendars for insurance companies, so everyone had access to his work. And I remember talking to Dr. Gordon, and he mentioned that he had did this project, and Charles White was living in LA at the time, and I think it was one of his students told him that his grandmother had a calendar from like Farmers Insurance, and it had a Charles White illustration on it. But his work was really accessible at the time, and he talked about making sure that everyone has access to art. So that was the thing for me that I really wanted to highlight in that show, is like all the places that he's gone, and people he's interacted with who are now considered prolific artists. At the time, he was really trying to create these images of dignity of Black people and trying to, push up against stereotypes. But he was also trying to make sure that people saw themselves in a more, real, authentic, fully realized way. And that show sort of really highlighted what was happening when he was alive and as he moved around the art world.
That's very powerful. Sound like a mirror almost.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the exhibition at Christian Green was called The Legacy of the Figure, and it was contemplating how many contemporary artists were working in figuration, and that they were pointing back to Charles White. And so that show had a Carrie James Marshall in it, Vincent Valdez, Deborah Roberts, Robert Pruitt, Kara Walker, Belkis Ayon, Jasper Johns, Michael Ray Charles. I mean, really, really big name artists in our space, and a nice show.
Yeah, probably thrilling.
It was good. I was sad when it came down.
Yeah. There's sort of this magical thing where, again, of that churning over and over, and I think a lot of when I used to teach back in a million years ago, often I would start out telling students, it's like I would bring up famous artists and tell them stories about their lives, and you know, they weren't always this famous artist.
Yes.
They came up through, and to see that linkage, and again that mapping, you know, of how it filters through, which is another thing that you guys trace, which is really yummy.
It is.
You know, to learn those stories.
And also, you know, with those exhibitions came a catalog that we were, I think there were like 7 contributors, and it was great for me because I was able to then also do a lot of writing. I think I wrote like 3 essays for that catalog. So in addition to the Campus Ponds catalog, I was able to contribute some academic writing to that project as well. Yeah. So it lives beyond the exhibition.
And where can we see it?
The catalog you can
from
Amazon.
Okay.
You can buy from the Blanton's bookstore.
Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah.
I wanted to slowly shift into, not slowly, I wanted to shift in, kind of shifting through time, to shift in sort of the present and the future. But I also wanted to open it really quick. Does anybody have anything burning? Or are you so captivated you're speechless? I'll go either way.
I mean, I guess that I'm just like so awed by this thing that you guys have built that's in this, you know, Austin. We're a big city surrounded by really big cities, right? In central Texas. And some of them have a lot of museums, right, that we do not have.
Yeah.
Right? And the ones that we have, it's just like such a gem to come over there and to see like these huge names in such an intimate setting, and it feels like a gem and a gift.
Yeah.
But I think it also speaks to the scholarship of not only you, Cherise, and Eddie, and the tendrils, the many tendrils that you guys have throughout the contemporary art world, which, like I was in New York and talking to some curators. I'm just like, there's all these paths back to UT and that program, and I just feel like, I don't know if you could talk about that, because I feel like this conversation is great, but it's like, I feel like it's so modest to what you guys have cultivated. Like, you know what I mean? The fact that, like, you know, we were at a place and then I see Cherise and she's like with Deb Willis and she's with all these people that I'm just like, oh my God, how does she, to navigate that? And then also to formulate those relationships that they trust you to, and the institution to have their work come here into this intimate setting. And these shows are so, maybe because of the intimacy, they can be so much more, not so much more, but they can be, the work can be seen in a different way and have different conversations that maybe they can't have at like a larger institution.
I was gonna say, well, and in Austin.
And in Austin, I mean, how do you do it?
Do
That's
they
what I'm
even
just
want
like,
to come? I mean, how do you
where would you go?
In a city that's not known, it's known for being quote unquote progressive, but it's certainly not known for being progressive as far as art is concerned in any kind of real, serious, scholarly way. So to build something like what you have in this atmosphere is impressive. I totally agree with what Tammy's saying. Yeah.
Thank you.
So to speak more about like, how did you get those big names to come?
Yeah.
Like,
it's not like how, but it's like, I think if you could talk about like how the scholarship is so specific to building these relationships with artists and institutions and collectors, so that they, if you have an idea, that ideal can be realized at the gallery.
Yeah.
And all of the things that have to happen to make those exhibitions happen.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate this conversation about writing, because it is so important as an artist and also as an academic. Having a conversation recently about someone who's like, you know, you have a show, especially sometimes at institutions, and as soon as they get a new website, you're gone.
Yeah, you're gone.
Like that is like it's that show that you had is like no longer exists anywhere. And the only way that it would exist is through like the scholarship or this archiving or people keeping records. I mean, you guys are really smart about understanding it has to live beyond that moment. I don't know, I'm rambling, but like I'm just like, so thank you to all of you.
Yeah, it reaches far beyond, your reach is far beyond, and then I think we'll talk a little more about reach as well. Something I want to touch on, but, far beyond Austin and Texas, where that sense of community, you have this sense of community, and then you have this sense of community, and you have that sense of community, and then, so then again, it's all those touch points, and speaking, keeping it so real that how else is somebody going to respond?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess there's a couple of ways to answer Tammy's question, and thank you for the sincere compliment. I really appreciate it. I mean, I've been doing this a long time. I will say that I have 3 degrees in art history, bachelor's, master's, PhD, and I worked in museums for my entire 20s, and the museums that I worked in were St. Louis Art Museum, Art Institute of Chicago, Metropolitan Museum of Art, De Young Museum, SF MoMA. So I came to the Academy with considerable experience and contacts, right? Having been a professional person in in the art world. So I have contacts from my youth.
Right.
I will call it.
You brought it in.
Yeah, so I brought that. But I mean, there's something about doing good work, right? Putting in the time and producing research products that people respond to. They understand the care and the research that you put into something, and doing it regularly. So that, I think, gives
just consistent, just like
yes.
this.
So I think that is part of it, and I try to treat people with respect, which I think goes a long way, and try as best I can to maintain good relationships with people, especially people that I've known for a long time. I mean, on the one hand, it doesn't feel very remarkable, but there are moments like this when I'm able to stand back and think, wow, this is a really neat thing. And I know there's a point that you want to get to about this being a social practice. And I've come to feel like this is a social practice that I am engaged in, that I didn't realize that I had made and or am practicing. And I think it was maybe 2 years ago, I was in New York. Deborah Roberts and I were sitting together at a talk by Rick Lowe, who was showing his paintings. I think it was at Pace. And, there are these massive abstract landscape-y paintings that are, probably 3 of them will take up that whole wall. And one of the questions that his interlocutor asked was about his social practice. And so he was describing, the kind of piecemeal way that he built project row houses and continued his own practice and fostered other people's practices. And then it occurred to me, oh, this is the social practice that I am engaged in. And I got to that idea and then couldn't kind of get past it, because artists have social practices, but do art historians have social practices? And then I thought, well, does it really matter if I'm an art historian with a social practice? It doesn't, because it is what it is. But then it is still hard to talk about, even if I recognize what it is. And I think that's just because I'm in it and I'm living it, doing it, fostering it.
Yeah, it's almost like naming it too hard is kind of, it's more like just doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to, you mentioned Carrie Mae Weems. She is someone who also has a very vibrant social practice. I think that Deborah Willis has a vibrant social practice, Kelly Jones. These are people and I guess I want to say that because there are Black male artists who get a lot of press for their social practices. There are fewer Black women practitioners who get the same kind of street cred, or maybe publicity. Maybe they have the street cred, but they don't have the publicity that their male colleagues have. And I'm thinking here of like the Rick Lowe's and the Theaster Gates of the world. But these are women practitioners who also have very vibrant practices of fostering engagement and mentoring people and trying to get the field to grow and to sustain.
Yeah, you're building something.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I said that in the meeting. I'm like, you're building something. It's, yeah, I mean, enough said. I mean, meaning that I don't have anything to add. It's like very poignant. I wanted to touch on just a few more things of moving it kind of into the future. But one was, another thing that really struck me when I was going through all the shows is, and also because we are live streaming from Austin, we're in Austin, like, you have a great, speaking of fostering, it's like Deborah Roberts' career, like who's in your collection? Tammy Rubin here is in your collection.
Yeah.
You've got Ariel, Renee Jackson,
Adrian Armstrong.
That's right.
Minnie Miles, Carla Nickerson. Who else? John Yancey.
Yeah, Betty.
Betty.
McConan.
Yeah. Michael Ray Charles.
Michael Ray Charles.
Yeah.
Almost everyone.
Yeah, I mean, so there's that's being a newcomer to Austin. That was one of the first things I noticed was the direct fostering that you provided a foothold, and that also goes into what you wanted to bring up, and I'm glad it sparked the memory. But if the Christian Green Gallery and the Idea Lab is closed, you can still go to the Gordon White Building because you took me upstairs, and they have, and you also change it sometimes. So that is an ongoing exhibition where if you're tooling around on canvas and other stuff is closed, you can still stop in and say hi, say, Joy, where are you? But when you took me, it's like, again, really yummy. And it moves around. It's like really delightful up there. And then also you have really quickly what I put out was your piece about like the original collection of African art, which is really astounding. So that's there as well.
You want to talk about the collection?
Yeah, sure. So
Let's do that.
there are about 1,400 pieces in the collection.
It's huge.
I think maybe 600 to 800 of them are African art objects or art and cultural objects, and about, what does that leave, like 400 of contemporary? Almost five.
I'm really bad at math. Okay.
We have a acquisitions fund, an endowment that kicks off a couple of $1,000s that I use in like a month buying art. It's been cathartic for me to spend somebody else's money on art. No. The collection is reflective of the diaspora. There's works from the continent, from the African continent. There's works throughout the Caribbean and the U.S. My goal for, I guess my collecting strategy for the past maybe like 2 years, well, I guess I've been there for about 2.5 years, is to think about ways to make the collection sort of a bit more equitable. And about 3 or 4 years ago, Kayla did an audit of the collection and identified areas where people or groups were overrepresented and under. So it's been my goal to sort of like even things out. And for the past maybe 2 years, I've been focused on Black queer artists. And that sort of like dovetails into an exhibition that I've been working on for the past 2 years that will be mounted in the spring. It's Transcendence, a Century of Black Queer Ecstasy. 1924 to 2024. So we're getting loans from all over the place, all over the country, some works from the UK. But what I want to highlight is that there are a ton of works in the show that it's coming directly from our permanent collection, because there was an area that needed some attention, and I was able to use the Acquisitions Endowment Fund to build up that area. So one of the things that we thought about, there's a lot of tenets that go into like how the collection is sort of composed, but we make it a priority to focus on artists that are Austin based, and then Texas, or Central Texas and the state at large, but also thinking about emerging and mid-career artists, because it seems like to me, and I'm pretty sure this is probably the standard, is that artists work really hard to try to get in public collections, and that is something that really their career sort of skyrockets after that. So we've been trying to focus on emerging and mid-career artists to give them a starting point, so they can then cite that their work is collected by AGBS at UT, and it sort of like leads to other opportunities for them. Another strategy is acquiring work from the exhibitions that we mount. That practice started before I got to AGBS, and I was sort of like,
that's great.
I've continued that. And so the collection is growing steadily. We've been fortunate to have a couple of collectors in Austin to gift us works that we otherwise wouldn't be able to afford with our acquisitions fund. But it's growing steadily and mightily, and trying to make it a more equitable and accessible collection. Recently, when Kayla came on board earlier this year, we have a database that she's been populating. I can just let you just talk about that.
So we're working on getting the database of all of our artworks publicly accessible, so that people can see our collection online, access information about the artists and the artworks that we have in the collection, so that there's also an opportunity for people to access our institution in that way. And I've also been helping Phillip with acquisitions in relation to this exhibition. So I think one really big one that came out of it that we're really excited about is a work that Phillip had identified from the UK, a Rotimi Fenicoyote work that we were going to get as just a loan for the show, and then logistically realized it's really expensive to ship a work from the UK here and back, and it sort of became an interest of ours to potentially add that to the collection. So that came out of that effort as well. And I think it's also important to mention that we historically have helped other institutions on campus acquire work by Black artists. So not only the Charles White, but and supporting financially other institutions like the Harry Ransom Center and purchasing artworks for their collections. For example, is a portfolio by Dawood Bay that we help them purchase. So there's ways that even if it's not in our specific collection, we have sort of helped others take root and try to collect artists that we feel like are important as well.
Yeah, part of what we've been wanting to do is just to have better representation in campus collections of Black art.
Yeah, we did. This comes around to like some of my final stuff I wanted to touch on. Was you mentioned the upcoming show? Will you say that again?
Yes.
For the upcoming, yes.
Yeah, so on January 24th at 5 p.m. No, it's like 6. It is the opening of Transcendence, a Century of Black Queer Ecstasy, 1924 to 2024. Exhibition is a survey, really, of a century of production, all kinds of media, painting, photography, sculpture, performance, And the show is spread across 3 spaces. So Christian Green Gallery, that's in Jester, Idea Lab, that's in the Gordon White Building, and the VAC, the Visual Arts Center, it's in the art department. And this show is really looking at strategies of representing ecstasy. I think it's an under-researched, Black queer ecstasy in particular, is an under-researched topic. In the history of Black queer exhibitions, there's been exhibitions about love and desire and,
AIDS
equity.
and HIV.
Right. There's been all of these things, but there's this, and it's kind of elusive anyway, trying to capture ecstasy because it's this thing that exists when you are kind of unconscious or out of control, or when you are, excess is the word that I always lean towards. So it's a difficult, an unwieldy topic in general, but this exhibition is trying to show the way that it's been visualized and even performed over the past 100 years. So there's ephemera, there's some text, and not all the works in the show are by Black artists or queer artists. It's really about the experience of Black queer ecstasy that the show is trying to highlight, or the show will highlight. And there's a ton of programming that's coupled with the exhibition. There is a symposium. On day 1, we're doing 2 keynote speakers. I guess I can mention their names are confirmed. So Texas Isaiah will be one of the keynote speakers, and then Lola Flash will be the second keynote. That's on day 1, and on day 2, there's a morning and afternoon panel with the writers of the exhibition catalog. So day 2 would be the writers basically workshopping their essay submissions. And so there's 7 themes of the exhibition. There will be 7 writers. So the day 2 will feature 7 speakers, I guess, or 7 presenters. The themes are spirituality, sex and sensuality, beyond figuration. So looking at works where the figure isn't the primary thing that's represented in the image, but the feeling of ecstasy is still conveyed there. Portraiture, Black queer futures, altered states. Altered states is really fascinating because it's the one thing that was kind of elusive in the ways that I didn't really want to highlight, the ways in which we self-induce ecstasy. But I think it was important to show all aspects of it. And the last, well, I shouldn't say the last, the 7th theme is dance and movement. So it's looking at performance and how ecstasy is sort of conjured or activated through bodily movements and dance.
Wow, that sounds really great.
I think it's important to add the catalog will be published in 2026.
Yes.
So that we can incorporate installation shots, so that the catalog again becomes sort of an archival example of what the exhibition was when it was up.
Yeah.
And there's more programming too. We're partnering with a couple of organizations around campus, so All Starter Fest. Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, we'll have a performance by artist Christopher Paul, and then we're working on a film screening that we're partnering with a local organization on. So
That's going to be an exciting spring.
Yes, very.
Yeah. That's great. I wanted to rule into my final question, which is your forward vision. And have you guys considered a satellite space off campus?
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Because,
we
yeah.
love our space on campus.
Yeah.
So we never want to not have our space on campus. But we recognize it is exceedingly hard to get to both of the galleries. It's hard to find parking. And besides, it's a university campus. Unless you went to school there or work there, it is hard to navigate because you don't know where stuff is. You don't know where to park.
Totally correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got turned away at the gate when I was there to eat lunch. I was 30 minutes, something like that. And
Yeah.
he's like, well, you gotta go over there. And I'm on the
Yeah.
phone with Joy going, I think I just went over a median.
Yes.
Tried not to run over any students.
Yes.
You didn't park in the mall, did you? I'm like, no, I'm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we are 1 block north of Atlanton, so we're not that deep into campus, but it is far enough. It is a mental hurdle to get to us. And so we recognize that, and we try to make it easy. We'll give you a parking pass, and we'll give you a ticket to not have to pay for your garage, and all kinds of ways to make it feel more accessible when we know it's not. So yes, we would absolutely love to have a site off campus, and we each think about, what if we curate an exhibition over here? What if we, use this space, in fact, for Transcendence? We almost partnered with Big Medium. And we were super eager to have an off-campus space that people could drive to, get out of their car and walk into, instead of walking a mile to get to it. So yes, it is a hope of ours to have more exhibitions off campus, and eventually to have a space off campus where we can show
Your very own, yes.
where we can show work.
Yeah, because how this all started was because Joy met me for coffee like several months ago. And when you mentioned it, I was like, my immediate reaction was like, what can I do to help? What do you want me to do? Like I had this is how old I am, I could work on the mailing list, or, give me something really tedious that you just absolutely freaking hate, and give me a pile, I'm good at this stuff. But what do you, this is just daydreaming, and if I'm pushing too hard, you can tell me.
Yeah.
But if you had the funding, and the staff, and the reasonable real estate, what would it look like? I mean, because my biggest question is, what can we do to help?
Yeah.
Because if this went into action, I would step up and throw in some time, because I think it would be great, to be able to participate in Third Thursdays, and to be able to have that where you're on a circuit, people can park part of it, but as a wing, as a satellite space, not replacing AGBS, but yet another part of your ecosystem of all the things that you have going on.
Yeah. So individually and together, we have met with Kevin Ivester and the Big Medium people and other display, exhibition, gallery spaces around Austin, and we together have thought, well, how could we make this work, and what does it look like? In my mind, I kind of like the idea of maybe a central structure that has artist studios in it, and that has galleries in it, and that we could be part of a complex that is living art all the time. I mean, I think that with the money in Austin, that is a possibility. But I also think it probably needs to be on the outskirts of Austin, right at the very edge of, I don't know, Manor, or of Kyle, or I don't know where, right? I can't see something like that in this day and age happening in the center of Austin anymore, like it might have happened when I first moved here, for example. But I think that affordable studio space and community for artists to gather needs to happen, and also space for them and for others to see good art.
Right.
So that's a kind of dream that I have, that we can have, maybe there's a factory, at the edge of town that can be converted, or something like that. That's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah. Well, it's exciting, and I hope that something like that comes true.
Yeah, thanks.
Absolutely. I think we're gonna slowly wrap up. You're free to stay and hang out and keep the conversation going. But is there anything else that you all wanted to add that I forgot, or that
Well, I want to thank all of you for coming out. It's a Tuesday evening in the rain, so thank you for coming out and listening. We appreciate it.
It's been a really lovely evening, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank all of you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for spending time.
Okay. Let's let these guys stretch their legs. And, so definitely feel free to hang. You don't have to like leave immediately if you don't want to.
Hot mic, hot mic.